Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. So excited that you're joining us, and we have Pastor Rob on here from Missouri, and we're talking about the different phases of a church and how to get your church moving into a phase of increase and growth. It's a really great conversation. Before we jump into it, I do want to tell you and remind you that you can always go to churchboom.org. That is our website there, and there is so much there to check out. We've got Church Boom University, a coaching certification. We've got cohorts. If you're a church under 100, coaching is free. So make sure to check that out. But anyway, hey, let's jump into it and let's check out the conversation with my good friend, Pastor Rob. How can I serve you today? What's on your mind?
Well, I'm thankful just for the opportunity to be on the show and just have some questions. Just to give you a little bit of background really quick. We just celebrated our third anniversary. So we're 3 years old as a church plant here. We're about 10 minutes west of Silver Dollar City. So we're 30 minutes from Branson as well. Smaller community. And we started the church with just a traditional board. And so we have trustees and things of that nature, and really have been feeling led to transition into more of an elder board. And was wondering, Chris, if you had any advice on how to make that transition and smooth a smooth transition.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It's a great question. So your board right now, you have a board right now.
Yes, sir.
How many members are on the board?
So we have five.
Okay.
Well,
and what are they? Are they considered? What's their title? Like church board, or
really they're trustees. And so Here's what we've done. We've kind of modeled after the ARC church planning model, and so we have trustees, and then we have team leads, and I consider really all of those to be our leadership. But like as far as finance and things of that nature, that all falls to the trustees.
Okay. So this group right now, this board, this trustees, is overseeing finances.
Yes, sir.
You want to move over to an eldership. What for your mind, what is the difference and what's the gain?
So the difference for me is taking more than just a financial look or kind of well-being of the finance and the structure of the church, but looking from like elders, looking for people who will also have kind of more of a hands-on role in ministry in the church.
Okay. And then are you saying that you want the trustees that are currently there to become elders, or are you saying that you want to create a separate group, how
I am looking at transitioning the existing board, some of them, into elders, but maybe not all of them.
Okay. And is that where the challenge is?
Kind of where the rub is, and just with being unfamiliar, because I've never participated in a church that had elders. So I was in a denomination where the pastors were elders, and there were no other elders in the church. Right.
Okay. And so you do have a few that you want to keep, maybe one or two that you don't want to keep.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. Well, that's definitely going to be a tough conversation. Does that change anything for your bylaws?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's no issue there.
Nope.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one more question. Do you have terms for the trustees?
We do not currently.
Okay.
Which we should, but we don't.
Well, transitioning is always difficult because you're changing the yard markers in the middle of the game.
Yes.
And there's a couple different ways that it could be done. One is just having the tough conversations with individuals and saying, look, I think it's time to restructure how we do everything. And this is how I think the best way to structure that is. I don't know if you have a high influencer on the team that you want to move over to that, but if you haven't had a conversation with that person, I would, because when this gets brought up, you're going to need that person in your corner.
Absolutely.
And so I always say the meeting before the meeting is the most important meeting. I've heard someone say that, and I always say, I repeat it. But that is one way of doing it, is just having the tough conversation and kind of dealing with that. I don't know how else, you kind of get around it if you're going to go that path, besides just having a tough conversation. Definitely meeting with the people that are with you, the one person that maybe have influence on the board, that may be something. The other thing is possibly is if you wanted to keep both, but you don't have any terms, now that I think about it, because what could happen is you could keep another group, you could start another group, and then when this one's terms out, then you're done anyway, but you don't have terms. Yeah. So sometimes, if it's like, hey, within a year they're going to be gone anyway, then let them term out. But it doesn't sound like you have any terms, which, by the way, I think you should have terms on either of them. Absolutely. Yes. Probably 3 or 4 years is probably the best. But I don't know how you get around with it without terms, without just having a tough conversation and just saying, look, I would point it towards, hey, guys, I think we need to structure things differently. And I want to restructure everything. I want to get rid of the trustees. I want it to be more elders, and I want them to have more ministry role. The other thing is, with the 1 or 2 guys that might be stepping off, I think it's important that you find another seat for them on the bus.
Absolutely.
So that's a difficult one. Yeah. There's no getting around difficult conversations sometimes.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, but find another seat for them on the bus. And just say, hey, we're changing things up. I think it'd be best if you moved over here, you moved over here. You might need to have those conversations one-on-one. Your board better than I do, or your team better than I do. You might have to have those conversations one-on-one, because it's a catch-22, because what you don't want is one negative person causing the other ones to fuel off of their negativity when you bring it up. And so I like having the conversation, dripping it to different of the guys and say, hey, look, I think we're going to talk about this in about a month or 2, but I just wanted to get your opinion on this. Get the people that you think are on board with you, and those that you think are not so on board with you. That might be a conversation to have with you before you guys get into that meeting, and saying, I'm thinking about transitioning this. I'd like you over here. If you put value on moving them, they may receive it as value, which is an important part as well. And hopefully they do. Yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. I have put together some thoughts on what the elders would look like that I wanted to share with them at some point. But I do think having those conversations one-on-one is great advice. And then adding value by finding another position for those that may not transition is really good. So
yeah. Well, let me ask you one more question. The guys, the 1 or 2 that you think are not going to transition over to elder, is it because you don't see them being able to do this next role? Is that really the issue?
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that not everyone will transfer over. I just don't know without having those conversations, because there will be higher expectations on the elders than trustees. And so whether they're willing to make that commitment is part of it.
Okay. Well, if that's part of it, I think that to me is a little bit easier. Yeah, it does make it easier than, hey, I'm not sure you're quite at that level. That's a harder conversation. Yes. But when you're saying, hey, we're moving over, and I realize the yard market's changing, and I'm going to give you those kind of people. I would say I'm going to give you a chance to reposition yourself in the church, if you just think that's not what you can do. But we're headed there, and we're gonna make that change September of this year, or October, or whenever you're going to do it. Give yourself a few months. But that might be a little bit easier, because they might just ask themselves to leave, or they may volunteer to leave, because they just can't measure up to that. So, okay. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
What else you got on your mind?
The other question I have is, so being at the 3-year mark, we've grown quite a bit. Again, we're in a small town, less than 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but we run around 250 or so on a Sunday.
Yeah, 1 out of every 4 people go to your church. That's amazing.
Well, we've been really good. I've got really good people around me and good teams, and it's just been God's just been really good. But I'm trying to figure out, Chris, as a pastor of trying to get from 250 to 300 and beyond, looking at the role of a pastor. Because I know that transitions with the size of the church, and I don't want to be spinning my wheels in the wrong area. And so, do you have any suggestions on what I should be focusing on in a church my size?
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, congratulations on being that size at the end of 3 years in a town that small. That's just amazing. There's a few other guys that I know that are kind of in similar situations. I got one friend that's got 8,000 people in his town and 2,000 go to his church. I'm like, he goes, yeah. We were sitting at breakfast. I was there doing some coaching. We do a lot of executive coaching. So I was on site with them for a day, and we had breakfast early in the morning. And some guy comes, we shake each other's hands at our breakfast, and then the guy leaves. He goes, yeah, that's the mayor. I go, he's not the mayor. You're the mayor. I go, you got 2,000 people going to your church. I go, whatever you want to do. That's the beauty of it. So, yeah, you're probably in that same position. You're probably the mayor. Without the title, you're actually the one with the influence. But one thing for sure is, Rob, is that when an organization grows or wants to grow, structure is the big thing you always have to look at. Is it's not so much strategy changes as much as structure and focus changes. That is what I think changes. You're changing structure and you're changing focus, and that's what really changes everything. So, who answers to who as you get bigger? Who reports to who? You get 5 staff, then you get 8 staff, you get 10. They're not all answering to you. How's that going to work? So structure has to change. The other thing that has to change is focus. What is mission critical for you when you're trying to get to 100 is different when you're trying to get to 500. And mission critical is an important part. And the one thing I always say about mission critical, people always say, how do I know what my mission critical is? You can really narrow it down very fast with one sentence, and that is, if Rob doesn't do blank, our future is threatened. What's the blank? If Rob doesn't do blank, our future is threatened. And so that is a mission critical statement to say, like, man, I've got to be doing that. I've got to be meeting with people in the city. I've got to be raising dollars with high level givers. I've got to be doing this. I have to do this. If Rob doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. By the way, that works really well with almost anybody in your department or in the church, in the department. It's like the children's pastor needs to ask, the worship pastor needs to ask, if I don't do blank, our future's threatened. And it has to pass that test. Well, if I don't lead worship, our future's threatened. That's not true. Because you can raise up other worship leaders. Like a worship leader could go, if I don't lead worship, our future's threatened. No. You're not thinking that you could actually raise up other leaders, which you should be anyway, and should be raise up people to do what you do. So strategy or structure changes and focus changes. And as you get bigger, you have to think about who's answering to who, and you have to think about where you're spending your time. Fantastic. So lines of authority, where you spend your time is such a crucial part, and how you spend your time becomes more and more crucial as the church grows. And you have to focus on those things. And if mission critical is a great thing to do with your staff, always remember in time, man, I always tell people, you can't add hours, you can only trade them.
That's good.
You can only trade them. So the longer you go in ministry, the more you're going to have to trade hours, Rob. Bigger your ministry gets, the more you trade. You can't add. Even Jesus couldn't add hours when he was here. It was the great equalizer. But you have to look and say, okay, if I can't add hours, then I can trade them. Now, what do I trade them for? Worship pastors have to think that way. Where, children's pastors, I was working with a church one time, and the children's pastor's like, I got to go to Costco. They're a church of 800. I'm like, there's nobody in this whole church that can go to Costco again? Yeah, it's my third time this week. I'm like, that's not mission critical. That's not, you're giving hours to that. You need to trade those hours for something more important. Developing leaders, building teams, casting vision, or developing vision. Like, there's got to be bigger things that you do. You shouldn't be doing those things. What did Peter do in Acts? He found people to serve so he could devote him time to do this over here. What was he doing? He's probably serving before, but now he's trading hours. That's all he's doing is trading hours.
That's
and you have to, as the structure changes, your focus has to change, and that focus has to be, what am I trading? And you have to trade hours. You have to trade them for stuff that is more mission critical. Yeah.
Thank you. That is really good stuff. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an important part. And again, going to 50 when you first started, that was one thing, and then it changed again and changed again. And also, one other thing I'll say is the dynamic of the team changes when you grow. And this is how it looks. It goes from golf to basketball to football. Golf. Everybody gets to swing. Everybody gets to play. Doesn't matter how bad you hit the ball, you still get to play. Right? Now, church grows and you move to basketball. You don't always get to play. You don't always get to touch the ball. And superstars start rising up. And then you're not the superstar as much anymore because you get to touch the ball half the time, when in golf you have to swing every time. Over here, you don't get to swing every time. You get to touch the ball sometimes you don't. You get to take the shot sometimes you don't. There's a superstar who gets the ball more than you, and that's reality. Then when you really start growing as a church, you're 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, you move to football. Offense and defense don't even talk to each other. There are special teams that are different than this team. Way different than it was way over here. And it's very difficult sometimes, you'll find as you grow, for people in your leadership to adjust to the new levels. They were used to taking a swing every time. Now they don't get to touch the ball as much anymore. And they have to adjust to that in their thinking, and that is where tension can be created.
That is really good. I've never thought of it from that perspective. And so, and that kind of leads into my third question was around our teams.
Yeah.
Because we do have team leaders that I'm trying to figure out, as we grow, what principles should I be instilling in them? What should we be focusing on? And it sounds like you touched on a lot of that right there. It was really good. But that's where I'm at right now, is I need to figure out how I can best develop leaders for where we're at and where we're going.
Yeah. Well, one, on the team, we'll back up to the team, just to reiterate again, there's changes. And as you grow, people will have a hard time making the change. And because people tend to view the size of the church in which they first came. So if it was 100 when they came, it's 100 when you're even 400. Because they just view it that way. And it's interesting because they view it that way, they think the access to you, the access to them being the star, the access, like, they think that remains the same, when in reality it's changing, because it's going from golf to basketball to football. It's constantly changing. And they have a hard time doing that. Now, let's talk for a moment on developing leaders. Are you saying that you're talking about you developing leaders, or is the team, your lead team, not developing leaders? Or are they? And if they are, how are they doing it?
So right now we have a monthly team gathering, and we do learning, read books, things of that nature, but trying to figure out how to take that to the next level and what to focus on and things of that nature. And I'm also figuring out, right now I do that, and just looking at this question, this might be something that I need to hand off to someone else. So.
Yeah. Well, couple things. I don't know if you've ever checked out our Church Boom University. It's at churchboom.org. Go to churchboom.org, Church Boom University. It's like, I don't know, $29 a month or something, I don't know. But it's got all these master classes on there. And on there is a master class, which I teach that one. We have Sam Chan on there teaching. Like, it's amazing. But we have a leadership ladder that we talk about there. And the leadership ladder goes church, volunteer, leader, leadership circles, leadership apprenticing. So church is the church on Sunday. Volunteers is volunteers. Most churches have the third level leaders. We got these people we call leaders. Actually, I think a lot of churches have more managers with leadership titles, but you have this third level. The fourth and fifth level of leadership circles and leadership apprenticing, very few churches ever get to that level. And what they do is it seems like they leave leadership to chance. Like, that's a good guy. He's faithful. Let's make him a leader. Well, that's true. He might be a good guy and he might be faithful, but I don't know if he's a leader. And then what is the pathway to that leadership? So one thing is, like you're saying, you're going through a book with everyone.
Yeah, we've just done some books every once in a while.
If it was me, I would take your staff, your top, you worship, youth, children, whatever you got. Take your top 4 or 5 leaders, staff, whatever you call them. And I would say, guys, I want you guys to start doing what I call leadership circles. It's a book, 5, 6, 7 people. We meet once a month. We talk about chapter 1 and 2. What did we learn? How did we grow from it? What did you get out of it? This whole thing. I would disperse that out. That's what we talk about in Leadership Ladders on Church Boom University. Is we talk about the importance of taking your team and saying, go 5 or 6, 7 people that you believe in, that you think have a future in leadership, and start investing. Some already might be in leadership. Some may not be in leadership already. Get 5 or 6, 7 people, and I want you to start meeting with them monthly, and we're going to go through this book right here. If you take 5 people in your team and say, okay, I want you guys to go do that. Say the 5, grab 5 others. Now you've got 25 people having intimate settings and intimate leadership conversations. At the end of that book, I may say, man, my 5 are great. We're going to do another book. Or I may say, this guy never showed up, so I'm going to remove him off of that circle, put another person in. I may say, man, that guy's amazing. I think he should go do his own circle. One of my friends has a church of, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000. They started circles several years ago. He's probably got 1,200 people in leadership circles.
Wow.
It's a leadership producing machine there. It's not that because they're learning leadership and they're having conversations. Now, the next level is called leadership apprenticing. This is the one that I think is really important. I think they're all important, but this is the one that definitely people don't do. And here's the thing. Some people raise up leaders by intuition. Like, you probably do that. You grow a church to 250, you probably just grab some guy you believe in, start spending time with them, and it's just intuition. The problem, Rob, with intuition is it's never duplicatable.
Yep.
It's just intuition. You have it, some guy doesn't. So what we want to do is we want to take your 4 or 5 major leaders, get them to start having leadership circles and conversations, and that is sort of a farm league. You have a leadership conversation with 5 people over 2 books. At the end of 6 months, you're like, that guy asked great questions. I mean, has anybody, this guy's amazing. It's sifting and sorting, okay? And there's a lot more to it, but I'm giving you a 3-minute version of a very long thing. But leadership apprenticing is every major leader is taking 1 to 2 people every year to train them to do what they do as good as they do it. So by the end of 12 months from now, if you started it today, say you did, you should have not 1 worship leader, 3. You shouldn't have 1 youth pastor, you should have 3. You shouldn't have 1 children's pastor, you should have 3. So you're creating this enormous depth of tier 1 and tier 2 leaders, which creates an incredible amount of strength, because most churches, I always say, is 1 pneumonia away from a disaster. And what I mean by that is, children's pastor gets pneumonia, we're all in trouble. Not if you're apprenticing. So leadership circles is sort of your farm league. Leadership apprentices is you're pulling people up that are ready to go to the majors, like using a baseball term. They're ready to go to the majors. And apprenticing is just simply me meeting with you and me with you on a regular basis, showing you do what I do, and then start handing it off to you so that you can learn to do what I do. Absolutely. And I'm telling you, man, it works. It's based off of 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, where 4 generations are mentioned in 1 verse. That's apprenticing. It's apprenticing. So if you get a chance, check out CBU, Church Boom University, learn the leadership ladder. I'm telling you, it is a gold mine of people learning to develop their leaders, because that is an important part. I think we leave leadership to chance, and I don't think we should do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That was excellent. Thank you very much.
yeah, absolutely.
We are actually in the midst of one of those, you said pneumonia away.
Yeah.
We lost our children's pastor a couple months ago. And so we're in the process of hiring another one, but you're right. We didn't have someone as a backup, and it's chaotic now.
Are you hiring on, well, one, it's chaotic, and are you hiring on the outside?
Trying, yes.
Okay. If you started today and you went all in with Leadership Ladder, next year this time and forever, you'll never have that problem again. You will only have enormous amount of leaders behind you. And if God calls you guys to start another church 30 miles away, you're not worried about just getting a campus pastor. You got a whole campus staff that can go.
Absolutely.
And it's a game changer, because I think the day of hiring on the outside is coming to an end, because there's just not that much talent coming up. And if you don't create your own farm league, I think people are going to be in trouble. And I think churches have to create farm leagues. I just wrote about that in an article I did for another magazine. You got to create farm leagues. Have to. Yeah. So, hey, man, our time's up, dude. I got to jump. But, man, dude, it's really great being on the call with you. And, man, thanks for jumping on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you for this was a really excellent way to spend 30 minutes. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with my friend Rob. He's such a great pastor, and God's just doing awesome things in his life and in his ministry. And again, just a reminder to hit up churchboom.org. Check out all the different resources we have there. So many things that you can be a part of. Have a great day.